Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Just a quick intro of myself. My name is Paul Hawes. I'm the new incoming president and CEO for the BC Hotel Association. Would like to welcome everybody. There is a poll that's being launched right now, so please take a moment to review that and respond to the poll. We'll allow for a minute or two for the attendees to filter in before we start. And then just to note that the results of the poll will be live as we go, and we'll go into the Q&A section as well. How are we doing for results there, Gareth?
Yeah, I see they're coming in. So we've got upwards of 10 responses on the poll at the moment.
Let's get a few more in there.
Yeah.
Again, welcome everybody. You'll see the poll on the screen if you can look to fill that out as we go. Feel free to put any questions in the chat as well as we go through, but I'll give you some more information on that. If anybody's having any technical difficulties, you can put that in the chat as well. Or you can just tell us how your day is. How's the response now, Gareth?
Good. We've got about 70% of our attendees who have responded. So I think that's a good number.
All right. Let's step into the presentation.
Okay, over to you then, Paul.
I can get the next slide, Gareth.
Yeah, sure thing.
To support truth and reconciliation and our Indigenous communities, we'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is happening on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I'm proud and honored to live, work, and play on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples and the Songhees Nation in Victoria. We thank Indigenous peoples across the land for allowing us to live, work, and play on their traditional and ancestral territory. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar, Using Data to Delight, how to understand guest preferences, predict behaviors, and deliver tailored experiences. First off, a big thank you to Fortis BC, who generously sponsor all of the BC Hotel Association webinars. And it's thanks to their support that we're able to keep these valuable insights flowing each and every month for the community. Before we dive in, though, have a couple of quick housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded, and we'll send out the recording to those of you that have attended. There'll be a few bonus resources as well. If you have a burning question, then, as I said, drop that into the Q&A box, and Scott will tackle those at the end. We've set some time towards the end for just that. Today, we're going to be going to help accommodators you get smart about data that you're already sitting on, whether that's in your PMS, through your spa, golf, or venue, event management systems. There's a gold mine of information there, and we want to make sure that you're tapping into that. We'll be covering how to leverage that data and drive more direct and repeat bookings into your property. I'm excited to introduce Scott, President and CEO of Ascent360, who's here to guide us through all of the pieces to do with this platform. Ascent360 is a guest data and marketing platform that pulls together and enriches guest information from all different systems. So it's helping hoteliers create personalized, automated marketing campaigns that can really move the needles on direct bookings, guest loyalty, and ultimately repeat visitation and then revenue growth for the property. So I'll introduce Scott and hand it over to you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, so a quick introduction about myself. As noted, I run a company called Ascent360, but I've lived in the data world for a really long time. Most of my career, we like to say that we were doing data before data was cool, and that has changed over time. When you say like, well, what does a guest database look like? It looks like anything you want it to be. It ultimately is, guest information, but that's connected to any sort of other piece of data that you can find. It might be web data, it might be PMS data, it might be spa data, or even email data. A couple quick notes about myself. I was at a company called Merkle, and Merkle is a company that was building custom marketing databases for the Fortune 500. So think of, Royal Caribbean and Disney and Dell. And it was at a time that these things were, immensely expensive. It was, bleeding edge technology. And we were doing things that were really, really quite special at the time. Over time, that's all become so much more straightforward using software and sort of modern techniques. So that's really when I went and started Ascent360 to build the same sort of software at a fraction of the cost, which is, again, what I'm doing today. So I'm just glad to be here and glad to dig in with everybody.
Thanks, Scott. And we have some questions that I will fire out to you. We did a quick run through a week or so ago, and I said I might throw in some additional questions depending on how the conversation is going. But to start, what are some of the best practices for creating personalized offers that resonate with different guest demographics?
Yeah, I think the best practice is to maybe start with the basics, and that is, you want to get your guests into a place, a sort of single source of truth, and you want to know things about them. And what are the sort of things that you can know about them? Well, you can know their core, their core sort of demographics, like where are they, right? Do you know their address? If you do, how far is that from the hotel? Can you know their past booking history? And that is, did they book through an OTA? Did they book direct? How many times have they stayed the night? What sort of rates did they pay? And you've got all that data is already in front of you, and it's already sort of the data that you have. It's just, well, how do you decide what exact campaign you actually do want to run, and what kind of campaign you want to run, and then you can start making sort of decisions about the offers. So maybe the right way to think about it is with just a purpose in mind, and that is, what are you actually trying to achieve? And if what you're trying to achieve is, let's just say it's a direct booking, well, I would create a campaign that said, well, I'm going to offer a direct booking. I'm going to send that to everybody. The people who've direct booked in the past, I'm probably going to treat a little bit different, but the people who've booked through OTAs in the past, I'm going to offer them things that they didn't get or wouldn't get if they book again through an OTA, right? That might be things like, they get to stay on a different floor, on a concierge floor. They might get, get to be part of a happy hour that happens, or, you know, a drink ticket or something like that. But I think the secret is if you can actually know something about the people, and, you know, in this case, it's a very simple segmentation that I'm just inventing, that some came through an OTA and some direct booked, then you can have a pretty good sense of what that looks like. If you want to start really personalizing it, you can start to say, well, what did they book the last time? Was it a queen? Was it, you know, doubles? Was it a suite? And offer those same sort of things, or at least include those same properties in the offer, because ultimately the closer you get to matching what they're actually looking for, the more likely that they are to actually make that booking.
No, that's interesting. And having been on the receiving end of some of these communications, I know
Mm-hmm.
it really does make that stay feel more personalized, and welcoming. So it's a great way to communicate. Um,
Yep.
One of the key questions that I noted here, and I think for this audience is going to be really important, just given the makeup of BC hotels, from small to large, the big chains, the independents, and the small family-run properties. So, how can small or mid-sized properties compete with some of the larger enterprises in offering these data-driven, personalized communications and experiences?
Yeah. You know what I'd say is I think everybody starts at the exact same place, whether you're small, medium, or large. And what I mean by that is you start at the beginning, and it is a journey, and that journey isn't solved by having a lot of dollars. It is sort of a maturity. So let's just say a small or medium business wants to start this sort of personalized dynamic marketing and do a good job and impress their guests. The way to start is to say, well, what can I do in year one? And that year one is probably pretty straightforward. That might be, hey, we want to create a pre-arrival series, and we're going to create then a post-departure survey. And so you might say, okay, that pre-arrival, we're going to do, you know, 2 emails, one 7 days before they arrive, one the day they arrive, and then the post-departure will be the day after. And this is already data that you have, and it's already the sort of email that most systems can handle, right? Even, you know, almost every system out there can sort of handle a pre-arrival. You know when they're arriving. And then you say, I'm just going to start by saying, welcoming them, tell them the things that they need to know, where they can park, what time check-in is, you know, a big confirmation number, right? Everybody feels a little bit better knowing that they in fact do have a room when they show up. They didn't do it for the wrong week, you know, all these sorts of things, so that on their mobile phone, when they land or are on the drive, they can look it up and say, okay, I know these things. Yeah, I did in fact say that our dog is coming, and that sort of thing. And I think that is, if you will, the right way for anybody to start. And if you start with that, it's automated. It's set it and forget it, right? You do it just once, and now everybody is part of this pre-arrival. And let's just say on the post-departure, in a survey, you're going to ask a question, and, you know, one of those questions, you know, might be, um, you know, something about them, like what did you enjoy most? The yoga, the, you know, walking around the city, or something like that. And if they answer that, well, now you know something that you can send in the future. And so that journey takes even the really big guys a long time to do. And the really big guys might be 3, 4 years ahead, but they're not so far ahead that nimble young companies, you know, can't ultimately do a better job. So then, you know, in year two, might say, okay, great, I've got the pre-arrival series going. I've got a post-departure. Now I want to implement a booking confirmation automation. So, you know, 1 year exactly after they booked, I'm going to send them a note. or I'm going to create something that gets sent that includes something about them. Let's just pretend that we know that they did like yoga. Well, when we send them another marketing piece, we can include a little block that talks about the yoga studio that's 2 blocks away. It might not even be revenue generating from that you're going to be generating, right? If you do have yoga in your hotel, that's great. If you don't, you've got a partner that provides it. And now you're sending something that is, in fact, personalized, it's friendly, it speaks to the person who's actually receiving the email or the text message or however you're sending this. And I guess I'd say, you know, we actually call this, we have sort of a framework, it's called a maturity model, that we sort of talk about what it takes over the course of 5 years to get to something that's like really integrated marketing. But you know, what I do know is that almost any hotel can execute on just a couple of things each year and get to a place where they've got a really sophisticated program.
I love that. I come from a land of slow and steady wins the race. And just knowing, especially with smaller hotels, family-run properties, independents, that they have a million things on the go, and one of the last things that actually hits their plate is the sales and marketing side of it. And so just by trying and testing and taking that learn, tweak, and evolve approach to utilizing the system, I think is going to be really key to the success of it.
Yep.
What are some of the biggest barriers companies face in delivering a seamless guest experience? And then do you have some thoughts on how they overcome those?
Yeah, I think the biggest hurdle to seamless guest experience is that there are so many point solutions, right? So our clients will often have a property management system. They might have been using that property management system for 2 years, and they came from a different property management system that had guest data and guest activities, all their bookings, but they didn't migrate it over, so they really can't see a guest's full history. And then they've got a point solution that might manage the spa, or maybe they're actually selling merchandise, or you know, you can buy champagne for the room, but that's coming through, you know, some e-commerce system, or maybe you're renting beach chairs or beach umbrellas by the pool or cabanas, and that's a third system. And so what the real problem is if I were to even ask one of those, you know, hoteliers, tell me about one of the guests coming in this weekend, they would say, you know, I really need to check, and I can look it up, but I'm going to look it up in 3 or 4 systems, and then I can kind of know the answer. And I think that's the hardest part, is just the data's not all together. So I think the secret really is, how do you bring the data all together so you can have one view of the guest, you can know the sort of activities that the guest is undertaking, and that can also include, you know, what are they doing on the website, right? Are they browsing on the website? Where did they come in from? Those sorts of things are, if you can know all those things, then you can really treat the guest special. And I think it even needs to be in a way that you can know it when the guest arrives, right? You sort of want to know, is this a high value guest, a mid value guest, or a low value guest? And if it is really a high value guest, you probably want to let them know when they walk in the door. And it's just really hard to do if the data is spread everywhere.
Here's one of my hot potato questions. So here we go.
Yeah, sure.
Just thinking about some of our members, and again, the hotels across the province. In some situations, hotels don't operate their restaurant or perhaps their spa and other pieces, but it's still within one resort or within one hotel complex. Do you work with third-party So say somebody is operating the spa or the golf course or something, do you integrate those data inputs as well?
So we definitely work with companies that do that. We've got clients who have data, and not all that data is actually their own. They've just made agreements with the restaurant operator, and maybe the restaurant operator uses OpenTable and they know reservations, and they've made an agreement to say, hey, we can pull that data into our database, and in return, we will market your restaurant. Right? It's a benefit for everybody. But if in fact we can see that they don't if we can see that they don't have a reservation in the restaurant, why not include a little block in an email on that pre-arrival to say, and don't forget, our restaurant's filling up, make your reservation here. And that helps both the hotel and the restaurateur. I think a pretty interesting example is we work with a lot of sort of tourism boards, as well as sort of central reservation systems for sort of large sort of areas of geography, and some examples of that would be, Steamboat, Colorado. The entire central reservation system for the entire valley, which is 200 hotels, is all coming into the Steamboat database, and they all agree that that's a good idea because they're really all in it together. Right? The mountain definitely wants people to come to the mountain, buy a ticket, buy a season pass, and they'd probably prefer that they come to Steamboat's own hotel. But Steamboat doesn't have the hotel resources to house everybody, or even 2% of the people. So they all sort of agree that, hey, we can share this data. We need to treat it appropriately. And there's sort of benefits, sort of pro and con for all of that. I really think it's just about, good conversations and building good relationships with the people that you work with.
Absolutely. That's helpful, because just knowing how some of our hotels do operate like that. Obviously, hot topic. So how can AI-driven results help hotels fine-tune the promotions and really dive into understanding what guests are needing, wanting before they've even arrived?
Yeah, there's so much with regard to AI, and it is, if you will, evolving, but it's really substantive. So let's sort of talk about the different types of AI that's out there. And I think everybody's really familiar with some of the large language models, and that's ChatGPT and Grok and some of the other large language models that you can sit and have a conversation with. And let's sort of put those to the side for a second. Those are really important. But in the question that we're talking about here is, well, how does AI help know a guest, make predictions about a guest, that sort of thing? There very much are other types of AI models that are effectively built for predictive analytics or predictive behavior. And so if you just simply set an AI on top of a database that has lots of data, such as people's web browsing history and people's email open click behavior and people's booking history, you can build very successful predictive models to know which prospects you should be targeting. So let's just take an example. Let's just say in your database, you've got 10,000 people, but if in fact 40 of them have been clicking on your website, they opened your email, and they've been browsing around, and they live within 60 miles of the hotel, those would get crunched by some predictive analytics and give you a score and effectively tell you that these are very hot prospects. If in fact some of these people are thinking about booking their wedding, like call them. Let's call them right now. If it's rather just that they're thinking about a vacation, well, let's follow up with them. Let's make sure that they're sort of in our list of hot prospects. And the sort of, analytic models that you can think of are things like, next best customer, or you can also think about knowing what room they might book based on what they've been looking at, or you can know what other sort of activities they might be interested in. And so there you've got, predictive analytics. There's sort of another column, and that is just the pure personalization question. So if in fact you know that someone is 67 and likes fine food, what is true is some of the large language models will soon be able to build the copy for you in an email automatically, that sort of speaks to the idea that this person, excited to join us. We have fine dining. The restaurant is fantastic, and it has a large wine selection. Versus if the guest is, let's just call it 27, and told you in the survey that they like yoga, then you're going to have a different message for that person. Now that piece, I think, is like, if I sort of gave two examples there, the predictive analytics piece is already real, and it's used by our clients and everybody in other industries. Even the small guys have some predictive analytics. The sort of one-to-one dynamics of building messaging is still, if you will, on the drawing board, is still being tested. But I can kind of safely say that in a year from now, when you send an email, everybody on that list might get a slightly different message from each other based on who they are and what you know about them.
I think back to my hotel days, Independent and then Fairmont, and the amount of work that we would do to understand the customer's needs before they arrived, and how we could get them back. But that was really hard work.
Yes.
So seeing the platform and being able to really, and through AI, gain that intelligence and be able to quickly, swiftly react and create a communication chain is incredible. I'm just going to do a quick pause and put an ask out to the folks who are here listening with us, to put any questions in the chat, or if there's any questions that we want to tackle now, then we can do that, and just give a quick moment, and then if not, we can carry on with some other questions.
Even if someone had a comment or a story, right? I imagine some people are all experimenting with some of these tools as well, and if they're doing something interesting, it's good to share.
Yeah. So we'll just give you a quick moment there, Gareth and Lindsay, if you're able to share anything on the question front, or comments, and then if not, we'll carry on.
I will maybe briefly tell a story which I think is interesting. It's a little bit outside of hospitality, but at one point we built a marketing database for DirecTV, and DirecTV is a big, complex business that has a lot of add-ons, right? You can buy extra movies, you can buy expensive channels like HBO and that sort of thing. And we built sort of a predictive spend for DirecTV. And if anybody called customer service, that prediction showed up to them as either 0 stars, 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star, 5 stars. And if someone had 5 stars, the customer representative knew to do anything for them that they wanted. If the person calling in said, I got mad, I threw my DVR out the window and I need a new one, they would say, well, that's fine, sir, we'll mail you one. Because they just spent that much money on movies and channels and that sort of thing. And if someone spent no money was very, very low margin, maybe made a lot of calls into DirecTV customer support, they would actually suggest moving over to Dish, and they actually had a set of Dish coupon codes that they would give to the guest, hoping that they might leave. And I think you can apply that concept so well to hospitality, because when we look at guest value, there is that sort of 20% of guests who drive 80% of revenue. They stay longer, they stay in more expensive rooms, and they pay rack rate or higher than rack rate. And when you look at all the sum of that, it's fantastic. And then you look at other guests that only come through Priceline. They only do it when you get the sort of, last minute inventory. And at the end of the day, they're not really even profitable. They're only helping, just sort of cover fixed costs, if that's the right way to say it, but there's really not much revenue there.
Great. We've got a question here from Connor. So what program or process do you use to rank customers?
Yeah, I'll tell you, we've got some preferable ones and some out of the box ones, but there's a bunch out there. One of the ones that we use and we really like is RFM, which stands for recency, frequency, and monetary. And it's a score that you first rank all of your customers based on recency, which is how recently have they been to the hotel. And if they've been very recently, they'll get a 5, then a 4, 3, 2, 1. And it's just done mathematically. You take all of your guests, break them into quintiles, right, which is every 20%, and the most recent 20% get a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And in our system, this happens all just automatically. You do the same thing for frequency, which means how many nights have they stayed, and then monetary score, which is how much have they spent. And what you get is 125 perfectly sized, equally perfectly sized, equally sized groups of people, from a 555, meaning that they are high on recency, frequency, and monetary, to 111 down at the very bottom. And it's just a model that is simple, it's easy to understand, and everybody can do it because everybody has the data to do it, right? You don't need special data, and you don't need a PhD statistician to build it. So we certainly like that. We also like some other versions of that, which is, are they engaged on the web? Are they engaged in email? What actually is their expected lifetime spend? And that's sort of predicting what their past spend is and their spend behavior to know what they'll spend in the future. But ultimately, we find RFM to be one of the best.
Yeah. Thanks for that. For me, I think about that tangible piece, case studies. What property or client you have in the hotel sector would you say is kind of your shining star, and some of the key highlights of working with them, whether it's examples of growth in revenue or repeat visitation, those pieces, so that the folks that are listening can kind of see themselves using the model?
Yeah, I've got a great one. It is, I won't say the name, but this client is actually
Come on.
All right. So I'll say it, and I think they'd be fine with it. There's a hotel called Mirror Lake Inn in Lake Placid, New York, near where the Lake Placid Olympics were way back when. I was going to guess the year, but I actually can't remember. So they've been working with us for about 4 or 5 years, and in almost every metric, they've just simply gotten better and better and better. So they've actually got I think it's maybe 120 rooms, something like that. It's not giant by any stretch of the imagination, but they've got tens of thousands of guests in the database now. They do have and run a sort of prospect conversion program, meaning they know who the guests are, but they know who came to the website and said, hey, we're interested in learning more. and they act on that. They respond to those guests, they personalize it, and the net result that I think is the most impressive is that 85% of their bookings are direct. So, at the end of the day, the sort of volume of direct bookings they have is up, 40-45% from what it was when they started working with us. Now some of that is that they just have a lot of guests that they do get repeat business, but they don't fake it, right? They work hard to get people to come back and stay again, and those people book direct. They give them reasons to book direct, meaning there are benefits for booking direct versus booking through OTAs. And ultimately, I think, when we do studies on the profitability of booking direct versus OTAs, it's really substantial, right? We find typically the actual value, or excuse me, the nightly room rate is 15-20% higher than through the OTA. And then when you don't pay the OTA fee, right, there's no direct booking fee, then the actual gross margin can be like 65% versus like 14% or something like that. And so most of their revenue, goes back to ownership.
Okay, thank you. Another question here. So Chim's Motel is a super small cabin property. Generally, I know a good amount of info on my guests. I'm trying dynamic pricing over fixed and not sure if it's the best way to go considering the tight margins. I have without other income sources like a restaurant or a conference room. So can I provide extras for my high value guests and provide an added touch, finding the most cost-effective automated pricing and extras is important. I've had a very bad experience working with Google Analytics, haven't we all? Haven't we all?
Yeah, there's very little good to say about Google Analytics for which is really the only Google Analytics that exists anymore. So I sympathize completely on that very last point. So on the dynamic pricing, I don't have a lot of experience with dynamic pricing, which is to say our platform doesn't do dynamic pricing. But I will say many of our clients use dynamic pricing systems and ultimately find that they really do benefit. They are of benefit, and it's worth using, and it's worth the money that you're going to spend. It is also kind of time consuming for you as well, right? Because there's all sorts of variables that it doesn't know that you need to sort of milk it. And so if it's small enough, which is 6 cabins, that might actually be a little bit too much. So I actually kind of apologize. I don't have a good sort of history on dynamic pricing. I don't know, Paul, if you might.
No, I don't. I don't know that. Lindsay's put this question in here from the Q&A box, and it's actually something that I was going to dig into as well. How can transparency and data usage enhance customer loyalty and satisfaction? The area that I was going to go is around just safeguarding sensitive data with data protection, phishing scams, and all of those pieces. How do you protect the data?
Yeah, so I actually think that managing customers' PII today is just fundamentally important, and it does take some time and effort. So when you think about just south of you, there is the California Data Privacy Act. In BC, there is CASL, which is the Canadian anti-spam law, and they're kind of complex laws, both of them, that require some amount of I don't know, expertise, if is the right word, to manage successfully. And I think that the castle rule is one of the most important ones, right? You're not actually allowed in Canada to email your customer unless they've given you express written permission, or if they've done business with you in the last 24 months. And that last piece is a huge opportunity, because the former is actually very hard to get, right? Express written permission is, they've had to check a box. It can be digital, but they've had to check a box and say, yes, they want to talk to you. Just because they booked a room doesn't give you express written permission. But if they book a room, you actually do get 24 months of being allowed to communicate with that guest. But what you need to do is effectively count 24 months from the time that they booked a room.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of tricky. So, once, 23 months has passed, you need to remember to say, okay, I'm unsubscribing this person once 24 months passes. And then, of course, if you are honoring the, California Privacy Act, which, you guys probably do, but you don't have to, I suppose, because you are in British Columbia. But there is a right to be forgotten there. And that does mean that if someone asks you to forget them, you actually need to forget them. And you need to take care in doing that, because if you forget them too deeply and they call you and say, hey, I need a receipt, you're like, I don't have it anymore because I really forgot you. But you can't only semi forget them, right? You can't fake it. It's against that law. So
Yeah.
so you really need to sort of take care in that. I would say the larger question is, you should really use the data that you have with a lot of sort of honesty and care. Speak to people about what you think they want to be spoken about. If you are, providing people sort of personalized experiences that's not bordering onto the creepy, but it's just personalized, they will thank you and reward you for it, because everybody wants to be treated like a human, like a person, like an individual, and that really goes a long way. But of course, if they tell you no, like, you just gotta call it no, and it's done for good, and it's unfortunate, but they've sort of let you know that they don't want any of what you're offering from a marketing perspective.
That's good. Gareth has the poll insights that it's going to share here. So are you familiar, or do you use a custom data platform? Familiar using, familiar not using, not familiar not using. So that's definitely the bigger group there.
Yep.
So that's, thank you for listening today, and for being part of this, and hopefully it's provided some insight. What property management system are you currently using? Maestro. And then let me scroll down. Opera.
Canadian.
Good old Opera. Certainly what I used to use. Room Master, and then other. Others making up quite a big portion of that. So it might be interesting for a follow-up question that we ask, an open form on that one. Question 3, what is your biggest marketing MarTech pain point? Lack of integration. Yep, no surprise there. Siloed, lack of visibility into reporting, and then multiple platforms for paid ads, SMS, email, direct email. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anything surprise you there, Scott?
No, I don't think so. Like, my guess is when the start of that question 3 is, lack of integration with PMS. My guess is a lot of people chose to use, one of the big platforms like MailChimp or Constant Contact, and they're really nice platforms, but they don't provide integration into the PMS. And what that ultimately means is you are genuinely batch and blasting, right? You're not even sure if they are guests in the past or whether they've never been there. So it's actually very, very hard to personalize. You typically don't know where they're from, which all of that is challenging. So I totally understand that challenge.
Yeah.
I am interested in the 9 out of 17 that answered for none of the above in the PMS. My guess is there's just an absolute ton of little ones out there, and there could be a few in there, but my guess is some people might not even be using a PMS. We definitely run into clients who are simply doing it the old-fashioned way still,
Yeah.
and if you're small enough that works. But it is very hard then to start getting your inventory out widely across the world to sell nationally or internationally.
Yeah, great. So for next steps for folks to make that leap, to start automating or look at alternative systems, how can they best connect with you and the team, and what would the steps be?
Yeah. So anybody can reach out to Ascent360. We'd love to talk with you. We'd happily just give advice and have a conversation. It doesn't need to be a sales conversation. Some people might not be in the right spot to get there, and they can reach out to me at sbuelter@ascent360.com or just info@ascent360.com. And of course, our website has all that information as well. And here we see marketing at ascent360.com as well. Ultimately, like moving forward with a platform like ours is pretty straightforward. It's like signing up for a MailChimp, only you get to integrate the PMS. It'll typically cost a little more, but the core idea is still the same. If you're a small hotel, we don't charge you much because you don't have that many guests. And if you're a large hotel, we're going to charge you more because you do have a lot of guests. And we effectively price that way. So it's pretty straightforward and good to use for both large and small.
Great. I'll just put out one last call for questions. And Scott, if there's anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up, but we'll give a moment or so for any last questions.
The thing that I would add, I would actually implore anyone listening who is sort of trying to build and grow a program is to take data collection very seriously. So, if people are booking through the OTA, do everything you can to get their email at check-in, and ensure them that the information will be protected and that you'll treat it the right way. But the more that you can start to build a data asset from your past guests, the more profitable any type of program like this is. And what I mean by that is if you've got a database with 5,000 people in it, let's just pretend that you can make X dollars from that asset. If you email them and say, hey, we have inventory midweek this week, you're going to earn some amount of money from 5,000. If you can grow that to 10,000, it's going to be 2x that. And if you can grow it to 20,000, it's going to be 4x that. The statistics really do work out that way. And so I would just implore everyone to, take it seriously. If I were buying a hotel, one of the ways I would value that hotel would be based on, its data assets. If it has in fact a large customer base and a large repeat customer base, it's worth more to me. So that's at least a thought.
Yeah, that's great. Is this a question here? Question to consider asking as anonymous attendee. Hotels often struggle with identifying what or who is being missed. Who are or where are the hidden guest segments or groups of guests that I'm missing, and how do I find them? Relying just on my PMS data leaves me wondering what else I should be looking for.
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I think there is this reality that if you're running a hotel, you might have some set of guests, and let's just pretend, some of those are, weekend visitors, and some of those are, people who come for weddings, and the other set is people who jumped up from San Francisco or something like that. And I think that the question is, well, what actually am I missing? What else could I be getting that I don't really know what that is? I think the way that I would start that is to survey your customers or profile your customers. If you take the customers you have and ask them, almost certainly some of those people are coming in ways that you don't know. I'll just give you a great example. My company's board meeting was in Tampa yesterday. All of us booked, which was 8 of us went to the board meeting. All of us booked the hotel separately, and I'm absolutely positive none of them have any idea that we were together. We just looked like 8 guests that were not together. We actually were a group. I don't think we qualified for group rates, and we didn't think of it anyways, because there was a couple of people who came who actually lived there. So if we would get a survey and we would answer, we were there for a board meeting, all of a sudden you start uncovering things. So I think surveys are a great way to do that. And I think another really good thing to do is to do a customer profile. And that is, you can take your guests, you can run them for $500 or so through a third-party profiling system. Email us and we'll sort of direct you the right way. And that will tell you hundreds of things about your guests: age, income, marital status, children, how old the children are they in the house, are they have they moved out, are they college educated, are they graduate school educated, are they Republicans, Democrats, what ethnicity, that sort of thing. And in doing so, you can start understanding things about your guests that you don't know, and start reaching out to them in ways, or finding new guests who look like them. And maybe that's actually a good point in there. I would suggest that rather than trying to like, is there some segment of guests that we just have totally missed? One of the great things to do is just say, look, if we know what our customers look like, there's a lot of tools to do lookalike models, or even, advertisements in Facebook. Like, we can push data into Facebook to create lookalikes, and all of a sudden you're showing ads to people who look like your guest but aren't your guest, and now all of a sudden you've got net new visitors.
Yeah, that lookalike audience is extremely powerful.
Yep. And I definitely didn't mean to sort of get too complicated there at the end, because I really would start from what I said at the beginning, right? You just start at the beginning, you choose a simple strategy, and you grow on it, and you build it over time. I don't know. There's a couple places that questions are being asked, because I see another one that says, besides getting an email, home address, what would you consider the next most important thing to get from the guest at check-in? In my opinion, that thing is cell phone number. The cell phone is starting to look like a social security number, because it is unique and they don't change, right? If you're my age, you've had 17 phone numbers in your life, but you've probably had the same phone number for the past 12 or 14 years. And I will probably have the same phone number for the next 12 or 14 years. So that's actually a really, really good one to get. And interestingly, I think once you get name, email, home address, and phone, you can get all the rest of it through third-party sources, or you can ask them that information as well.
Yeah, it's nothing worse than having a profile set up with a hotel company that's from a work email from 10 years ago and you can't access it anymore.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, we'll just do a quick check for last questions. Thank you, though, for everybody that's participated. We truly appreciate it on behalf of the BC Hotel Association. Thank you. and then to Scott and team from Ascent360. It's a great session. I think there's a lot to be learned, and to just dig in and try. This is an opportunity to start small and grow it to something really quite powerful and big over time. And it doesn't have to be a big branded property. It can be a small independent, and that's probably some of the sweet spot that you work with as well, with some of the smaller properties and more independent.
We work with single hotels that have 30 rooms, and we work with hotel management companies that own 50 hotels, and we work with internationals as well. So all of that is sort of ripe for choosing to use a system like ours.
Fabulous.
Excellent.
Well, if there's no more questions, thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. It's pretty grey here in Vancouver, but hope everybody's keeping well, and we'll see you all soon.
Paul, it was great chatting with you. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for having me on.
Great. Thanks, Scott.
Yep, you too. Bye now.